All right, welcome to the PowerPoint killer. Let's just dive right into it. Stop making pretty slides immediately. I know, that sounds kind of drastic, right? Especially if you literally spend hours tweaking fonts and adding those slick animations. But today, in this explainer, we're going to unpack the fascinating, ruthless logic behind why Jeff Bezos absolutely banned them. Think about a typical workday. How much time are we spending sitting in dark rooms just staring at a screen while someone reads bullet points to us? It's basically a cornerstone of modern business. But what if that exact cornerstone is the very thing holding you back from real scale? Well, that's the exact realization that completely transformed one of the world's most aggressive companies. So get comfortable, because we are going to completely dismantle the way you think about sharing ideas. Just let the sheer weight of this statement sink in for a second. Slides are lies. We're challenging the corporate status quo today, because when you're dealing with high-level scaling, those flashy presentations, they're essentially just hiding the truth. Think about it from a psychological angle. When you're forced to put a massively complex business problem onto a screen, what do you naturally do? You simplify it. You boil it all down to 3 little bullet points and slap on a nice chart that goes up and to the right. But as we all know, reality doesn't actually fit neatly into a bullet point. By focusing on the aesthetics, the transitions, the images, the layout, you create this illusion of competence. It looks like deep thought, but without actually doing the hard work of thinking through the problem. The format inherently covers up sloppy thinking. It lets a charismatic speaker just gloss right over massive logical gaps. And when a company is trying to scale at breakneck speed, those gaps aren't just annoying, they are incredibly dangerous. To really understand this philosophy and where this intense aversion to corporate fluff comes from, we've got to time travel back to a very specific moment, 1994. This is absolutely crucial context. Back then, Bezos wasn't the billionaire titan we picture today, flying to space and buying mega yachts. Actually, scratch that. He was just a guy driving around in a beat-up Chevy Blazer, operating out of a cluttered, chaotic garage, trying to figure out how to sell books on this weird new thing called the internet. There was literally zero time and definitely zero budget for polished corporate theatrics. Every single minute and every single dollar had to go towards survival and execution. When you're building the foundation of a business from the literal dirt up, you realize incredibly quickly that theoretical presentations do absolutely nothing to move the needle.
And that brings us right to a defining concept here: pure grind. It's the realization that success stems from relentless hard work, not some trendy office space. In those early days, Bezos and his tiny team were physically taping up boxes themselves, literally hunched over on the floor because they couldn't even afford proper packing tables yet. That gritty reality, it completely forged his mindset. It proved that his relentless rules for success weren't just quirky billionaire habits he developed later on. They were born from pure hustle. Look, when you've built a company by packing boxes on your hands and knees, your tolerance for corporate posturing drops to absolute zero. You learn that the only metric that matters is getting the product to the customer. Everything else, just a distraction.
So what we see here is a massive paradigm shift. It's a total clash of cultures. On one side, you have the standard way of doing things, prioritizing flashy presentations and fluff, and on the other, you have the deep analytics and rigorous logic that are actually required to scale. As Amazon grew at breakneck speeds, transforming from that messy garage startup into a global behemoth, Bezos identified that traditional meetings were actively becoming the enemy of scale. As the company got bigger, the problems got way more complex, and you just cannot solve a multi-billion-dollar logistical nightmare with a catchy title and some stock clip art. He realized that the time his executives spent building decks was time they were not spending analyzing the actual data. The fluff was actively fighting against the rigorous logic required to run the business. So the crucial point is this. He took the dramatic, honestly almost unbelievable step of permanently banning slides from executive meetings to eliminate all that unnecessary corporate fluff. Just imagine for a second the shockwaves this sent through the company. You have these highly paid executives, people who've spent their entire careers mastering the art of the boardroom pitch, and suddenly they're told their primary tool is basically illegal in the meeting room, banned forever, absolutely no exceptions. It was a brutal forcing function. By completely ripping away the crutch of the presentation, Bezos forced his team to communicate purely on the merit of their ideas, rather than the slickness of their delivery. But of course, you can't just ban a core business tool without replacing it with something better, right? Instead of bullet points on a screen, he demanded rigorous logic, introducing the 6-page narrative memo. And this is where it gets really fascinating. If you want to pitch an idea or give an update, you have to write a fully fleshed out, grammatically correct 6-page narrative document. Why? Because writing in full sentences and paragraphs forces you to actually connect your thoughts. It forces you to establish cause and effect. You cannot hide a weak argument in a dense paragraph the way you can hide it behind a snappy bullet point.
If your logic is flawed, it becomes painfully, glaringly obvious the very second you try to write it down as a cohesive story. Writing is just nature's way of showing you how sloppy your thinking actually is. Let's take a look at how these strict new rules built a culture of extreme accountability. 0 presentation slides allowed. Mandatory 6-page written reports. Flawless logic and deep analytics required. And here is the absolute kicker. Weak logic results in instant cancellation. This completely upends the dynamic of a normal meeting. At Amazon, the first 20 to 30 minutes of an executive meeting are spent in total silence. Everyone just sits there and reads the 6-page memo together. It's kind of like a high-stakes study hall. The presenter doesn't get to guide the narrative with their voice or charm the room. The document has to stand entirely on its own 2 feet. And if the executives finish reading and find that the analytics are shallow or the logic just doesn't hold up, the meeting is over, canceled instantly. Just imagine the level of intense preparation required when you know your meeting could be shut down before anyone even opens their mouth. Which brings us right to the core ethos of this entire explainer. Success doesn't care about your slides. It cares about your execution. The market is incredibly unforgiving, and it definitely does not grade you on your visual transitions, your color palette, or how perfectly aligned your pie charts are. The only thing that actually matters at the end of the day is reality. Did the product ship? Did the revenue go up? Did the customer get exactly what they wanted? Rigorous logic and relentless execution are literally the only true drivers of success. By forcing his team to abandon the fluff and embrace the sometimes painful clarity of the written word, Bezos ensured that Amazon stayed entirely focused on the raw, unvarnished truth of their execution. So, what does this all mean for us? Well, if you are ready to drop the fluff and prioritize relentless action over building yet another presentation, it's time to commit to execution. Look at how much of your own week is eaten up by making things look pretty instead of making things actually work. It's a super comfortable trap to fall into. Creating these presentations feels like productive work, but more often than not, it's just motion without real progress. It's time to demand more from yourself and your team. Demand clear writing, demand rigorous logic, demand that every single meeting you sit in actually tackles the hard truths instead of just glossing over them with a nice visual aid. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to really challenge your own workflow. Are you still relying on slides, or are you actually ready to execute? Think about the next big project or idea you have. Try writing it out in a multi-page narrative instead of just throwing it into a presentation file. It will be harder, for sure. It'll take way longer. But the sheer clarity you'll gain, it will be an absolute game changer. Stop hiding behind the fluff. Step right into the grind, refine your logic, and go execute.